All right. Cool. So, hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us at this evening's Advent Member Talks. My name is Sam and my pronouns are they, them, and theirs, and I'm the Member Experience Manager at adventco-working. So for this weekly program, each week it gives Advent members the opportunity to skill share with not only fellow Advent members, but also with the greater Charlotte community. And so each week we feature a different member on the topic of their choosing. And today I'm so excited to be joined by Dr. Alexis Carrero. And so she is a business communications coach. She specializes in pitches, presentations, and public speaking. And so as the Pitch Prof, she provides one-on-one and team help her clients communicate with confidence. She gains a podcastation resilience. So today she's going to some techniques, which will be very, very helpful for everyone to help you stand out in a crowded job market. So Alexis, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Great, thanks, Sam. Yeah, so my company is the Pitch Prof, and I work with a number of clients. I work with tech CEOs up and down the East Coast. They can sharpen their communication skills out in public. But I also work with people that are just terrified of public speaking in general. It's the number one fear that most people have. And it's also the number one thing that if you can improve, you can increase your value by 50%. And that's not me saying it, that's Warren Buffett saying it. A couple of years ago, he was asked that question, if there was just one thing people could do to increase their value by 50%, what does he recommend? And it was increase your communication skills, and especially public speaking. So that's what I'm bringing to the table here today. I love working with people, again, from all backgrounds about, and helping them communicate, helping them use their voice to express what they need to express, say what they need to say, speak up for the people around them. So if you need help public speaking, or you're not there at the level that you wish you were, contact me and I would love to help. Now, in the context of what we're going through right now in a global pandemic and a potential recession, I know that a lot of people are out of work or displaced or looking for work, and they might have been out of work for a while and trying to get back into the job market. So I decided to do the talk today on pitching yourself on the job market. So the talk today is going to be broken down into 4 sections. I'm going to talk about your resume, pitching yourself in a resume, pitching yourself in a cover letter, job interview prep. So before you even get to the interview itself, how do you prep for the interview? And then the job interview. So those 4 things. So the goal of the resume is to get the interview, right? So you don't necessarily have to think of the resume as the be-all, end-all. It just has to be clear and compelling enough for them to want to talk to you further. Same thing with the cover letter, and I'll go over that in just a minute. So the number one piece of advice I have regarding a resume, and it's not always super popular because it takes more work, is to tailor the specific resume to the position and the company. So instead of just shotgun blasting your resume, one resume to every company, really spend some time and customize it and tailor it to the company that you want to work for and the position that you're going after. Okay, why is this so important? Rule number 1 in communication is, who is your audience, right? We often think that when it comes to communicating, the most important thing is what I have to say, right? Whoever is the one communicating, it's what I have to say is the most important thing. It's what I want to convey. but it's not. It's who you're talking to. It's who you're communicating with. Because you have to understand where they're coming from to understand how to best communicate and articulate it so that they grasp it and they connect with it and you engage them. So it's not about you, it's about them. And when you're applying for a job, you have to think about the people that are going to be reading and analyzing what you submit. So if you can kind of think of it that way, then obviously they're going to want to know you spent some time with their job description, you read it, you understood it, and you are really trying to make an impression on them, not a shotgun blast. You know, it's kind of like dating, right? You want to feel special when you're on the receiving end of it instead of you say that to all the girls or you say that to all the boys, right? You want them to think, well, they really spent some time. They really understand who we are. And your resume should reflect that. One of the ways you can do that is how you mirror the language and the keywords from the job description. So if there are keywords that are repeated several times in the job description, then use those in your resume. You know, for example, if they're talking about sales or an increase in sales or growth over time or, you know, particular keywords that are in there, use them in your resume. Again, it mirrors the language that they've already used and highlights to them that you're paying attention to their specific job requirement, job description. So the other thing that you can do with the resume is really connect the data that you have to the so what. So, and this gets into quantifying, add quantifiable language in your resume. So it's not enough to say, I grew revenue by 10% over 2 years. Okay, that's good because you have data in there, 10%, 2 years. Instead of just saying, I grew the company while I was there, right? That's too vague. You grew it what? Sideways, right? You want it to be concrete and clear. So I grew revenue by 10% over 2 years, but so what? To what end? So be specific. You know, I grew it over 2 years by increasing our marketing budget and whatever it is, right? You want to specify exactly what you did, because by explaining it clearly, making it really obvious, then the people that are going to be reading your resume are going to think, oh, okay, now they can do it here too. They have this particular skill set that directly translates over, as opposed to having it be kind of vague. Okay, so anything that you can do to make it obvious for them, you want to do. Also in the resume, results, include your results, your achievement, and the outcomes, okay? So again, not just I grew or I established a team or I managed a team, but the team I managed delivered they overpromised or they over-delivered on what we promised, or they met their objectives by 2 weeks early. Whatever it is, show something quantifiable there. This also gets into the language that you use in the resume, right? So active verbs. And there are strong active verbs, performed. I managed the team. I established this project or this program. I defined the whatever it is. Okay, performed, managed, established, defined, all good, strong active verbs. Stronger active verbs would be something like optimized, increased, grew, reduced, shrank, minimized. That these verbs show movement over time. They show action, right? You went from here to here in the time that you were in the company. So think about how to bring your work to life based on the verbs you choose at the beginning of the sentence to demonstrate what it is you've done at the company. And then finally, and this is part of communication as well, it's not just the words on the resume, but also how it looks, right? How you are visually communicating yourself, how you are visually pitching yourself to your prospective employer, right? So the resume format, crisp, clean, short, simple, 1 page, 2 page. Make sure the layout is clean, make sure it's easy to read, make sure it's not crowded. You can use templates to make sure it's well designed, okay? So again, don't just stop with the language itself, but really think through how you're visually communicating to the people reading it. And I say this having served on a number of search committees for positions. And it can be somewhat disheartening because you might be spending a lot of time on the resume, but when you get, 75, 80, 150 applicants for one position and you're on the search committee, you're just kind of skimming. And if you, as the job applicant, make it too hard for me to read or to find the juicy, concrete, clear details and examples in your resume that directly translate into why I might hire you, I might miss it, right? So do whatever you can to make it as easy as possible for them to read and see what it is you want them to see and really stand out on your resume. So that gets into how you write it and also how you design it. So that's the first part, resume, cover letter. So I'm just going to start with 2 cover letter don'ts, and they're so obvious, I apologize for even mentioning them, but you have to check spelling and you have to check grammar. So many job requirements say, attention to detail, and when you see something misspelled or you see something poorly written, it's just a glaring mistake. And if you make that kind of mistake on a resume or a cover letter, what are you going to be doing with internal documents or external documents outside of the company? So just pay attention, have someone proofread it. A great way to proofread sometimes is going from the bottom up. So you actually read the last sentence first and then the second to last sentence, because that way you're just going to focus on that one sentence as opposed to reading it all the way down, because you've probably read it all the way down 15 times or 20 times. So just take that extra 5 minutes and proofread. The other thing I would recommend avoiding is a boring opening sentence. So the opening sentence that says, "Hi, dear, to whom it may concern. Thank you so much for taking the time to read my resume for the position of brand manager at XYZ." That's everyone's opening line. You're not going to stand out from the crowd just by saying something like that. So try to think of something more meaningful. Jump right into what you did at your last company. In my last company as brand manager at X, and then just hit them with your biggest success. Because if you can grab them in those first 5 seconds or those first 10 seconds, you might have a chance at keeping them all the way through. But just doing something kind of cliche and played out, it doesn't set you apart. And your goal is to set yourself apart as special, better than the people that you're competing against. Okay, so cover letter do's. And again, this goes back to my first point with the resume, tailor it to the specific position and the company. And I know that takes a lot of time, but if you do your research, again, it can give you a competitive advantage. So I say this because, and again, I've been on a number of job searches on the side evaluating candidates. there was one position I worked at recently, it was a university, and we were really focused on community initiatives, community programs, community partners, just a real focus on working with members of the community, partnering with people in the community, getting outside of the university itself, talking to real people about real issues. And on so many applicants that we got for some of the positions inside the university, I would see cover letters that never addressed the community aspect, never mentioned it. The word community was never even in the cover letter. It was never even in the resume. And it just kind of rubbed us all the wrong way, because why are you applying to work here if you don't even know what we're about? It was the messaging on our website and in all of our marketing materials and everything that we put out was so specific about how important the community was. And if you didn't have that in a resume or a cover letter, you didn't get an interview. Even if your credentials were, impressive by other standards, it didn't matter because you weren't the right fit for us. So again, it goes back to that rule number 1 of communication. Who is your audience? Do the research and figure out a little bit of information about what the company that you're trying to work for is about. What's their mission statement? What's their vision? Can you find articles in the news about them, industry articles that they're mentioned in, and weave that in to the cover letter? That is basically sort of a wink wink to the committee saying, I've paid attention, I've done the additional work, I've done the research to stand out, and I see you, right? It's not just that I want this job, it's I see you, I'm paying attention, I understand you, I'm with you. If you can do that in a cover letter, you'll stand out. So align your cover letter to the specific job, to the specific company, right? When you think about, again, rule number 1 of communication, who is your audience? You have to consider the audience's goals and their fears, right? At the end of the day, they want to hire the right person. They want to do the right thing. They want to hire someone who's going to be a good fit in the position, on the team, in the department, at the job, at the company. They're afraid they're going to get it wrong, right? Because if they get it wrong, it's going to cost money, it's going to be a personnel issue, it's going to be a problem. So if you can demonstrate to them that you're the right person because you've done the work and you're willing to go above and beyond just slapping, just hitting submit and sending your resume out to 50 companies and you don't care who you work for, that'll make you stand out. So another thing to consider in your cover letter is adding value. Your cover letter has to demonstrate the value that you add to the company. So, and again, that relates to rule number 1, right? Who is your audience? What are their goals? What are their fears? They want to know if you're applying for a $50,000 job or a $150,000 job, that they are going to get $150,000 worth of value out of you at the very least. So it's your responsibility to demonstrate that to them. It's not their responsibility to figure out if you fit. You have to make it almost painfully obvious that you're going to add value. And this gets into the interview, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. But right in the interview, it's not just, this is such a great position for me, this is such a great job for me. It's not about you, it's about them. So you have to bring to the table the value you are going to bring to the organization. So again, some of the ways to do that, same thing in the resume, right? Mirror the language from the job description in your cover letter. If there are keywords that keep coming out in the job description, use those key words. It shows that you're paying attention and that you are really giving them what they're asking for. So many people submit resumes and cover letters that don't even seem like they read the job description. So if you can at least do that and demonstrate, I paid attention, I wrote this for you specifically, that will help you stand out. The other thing to do is aim for radical clarity. So avoid vague language. We often try to sound really smart by using a lot of vague language, and it doesn't work. Say what you need to say. Don't bury the lead. Say it up front. If you increase something by 200%, say it. If you managed a team of 50 people, say it. Don't leave it flowery and vague. All right, so for the job interview prep, what you say for the job interview, what you say is as important as how you say it. In fact, what you say, let me correct that. What you say is less important than how you say it. What you say is less important than how you say it. So face-to-face communication, right? We're talking about the job interview. Now, it might not be face-to-face. It might be Zoom to Zoom. It's fine too, not a problem. We can roll. Face-to-face communication is made up of 3 parts. What you say, which is the content and the information. How you say it, which is your tone, your style, the volume, and your body language. Okay, now if you had to think about what percentage out of that, those 3 things make up 100% of face-to-face communication, right? What are the percentages you would give to each one of those? What's most important? What you say, and there's research that talks about this, but what you say, around 10%, that's what 10% makes up of face-to-face communication, is what you actually say, the content. 35% is like how you say it, how you deliver it, your voice, your tone, right? Think about text. How many of us have misinterpreted a text because we thought the tone was different than what the sender intended? So 10% is what you say, 35% is how you say it, around 55% is body language. So when you're going into that interview, you really need to consider how you are coming across physically, right? So this is where we get into interpersonal communication, and I do a lot of work with clients on this as well. Posture, right? Are you sitting up, right? It's different if you're sitting up here than if you're kind of like down here. It just doesn't feel as good. Or if your arms are crossed during a job interview, right? That indicates to the people talking to you that you're not really open, that you're closed off, that you feel defensive. So you want to avoid that. You want to be really careful and really cognizant about how you're coming across. Eye contact, right? So if you're doing an interview over Zoom, try to look into the camera, right? We're so starved right now for human connection because we've been so separated the last couple months that it's important to make eye contact. So even though when you're interviewing, you might be kind of looking at other people's faces on the screen below you because it's more fun to look at people's faces, but they want to see you. So make eye contact and smile, right? And I know it sounds kind of cheesy, but people want to know that you're going to be easy to work with, right? So I don't mean sort of plaster a fake smile on your face and everything's great and I really want this job. No, be authentic, be you. But if you are someone who's interested in genuinely connecting to the people that you might be working with, then yeah, look at them, smile, engage them. It's an opportunity to show them who you are. And then the other thing about preparing for the job interview, right? You have to think about the lighting in the room. Now that we're doing Zoom, it's lighting, it's your background, it's your clothing. So, and all of that comes into play. Clothing obviously comes into play when you're face to face, but it's a sort of a different level or layer when you're thinking about it on Zoom. And the other thing to keep in mind regarding the prep is that people remember how you make them feel. So people don't always remember what you said. People often won't remember what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel. So before you go into that job interview, get into the right headspace, right? You want to be energized, but not jittery, right? Positive and confident, but not cocky. Try to think about how you're going to come across and just take a couple minutes to center yourself and ground yourself so that you really come into the interview with a good, positive attitude, feel confident, and just do your best. Okay, now for the job interview. So we did resume, cover letter, job interview prep, job interview. So, and I just have 2 main points here. Prepare for behavioral interview questions. So a company might ask, tell me why you think diversity and inclusion initiatives benefit the workplace. Well, now you know from the question, right, that they think diversity and inclusion benefits the workplace. And so then you give the cliche answer, well, diversity and inclusion is really important because the more diverse people you have on the team, the different viewpoints, the more different viewpoints you hear, and you probably identify problems sooner than if you delivered a product into the marketplace and realized it after the fact, right? If a team is only made up of 10 white chads, right, they might not be the best people to figure out if a particular product is going to work for a larger audience. And that's fine as an answer, but that's an answer anyone could have given, right? It doesn't differentiate you at all, which is what you're trying to do. So a lot of companies now are doing behavioral questions. So instead of asking, why is diversity and inclusion important, they're going to ask, can you give me an example of how you went out of your way to ensure the previous teams at your prior company, at the previous teams you managed, were diverse and inclusive? So that gets into specifics, right? So you have to have examples, not just why is it important, but tell me how you enacted this at your company. Same thing. Another question might be like if strong interpersonal skills were important at a particular job, they might ask, tell me a time about how you initiated an uncomfortable conversation with a coworker, right? It's not just how do you handle interpersonal conflict, it's tell me a specific example. So have specific examples ready. And then lastly, ask questions. It's a red flag if you don't ask them questions. You want to pitch yourself as someone curious, as someone who wants to learn, as someone who wants to get better over time. If you don't ask any questions, you don't indicate that. So ask what success looks like in the role. What are some challenges that the person in that role should face? What are next steps in the process? So those are just, again, you don't want to come across as a know-it-all, right? Like, oh, do you have any questions? Nah, I'm good. Peace. No, right? You want to be like, yeah, tell me about the culture. Tell me about the company. Tell me what success looks like. What goals or milestones will I be expected to achieve within the first 30, 60, 90 days? So that indicates that you're thinking about the position, you're thinking about that specific position, and you're trying to think through how to be successful so that you're successful, but also the team and the company is successful. So I know that I just threw a lot of information at you. If you have questions, you can follow up with me. And yeah, I guess that's about it for me. Because
Awesome.
I know we're at 5, so I want to respect everyone.
Thank you. That's like really like such great information. And we actually have quite a few questions, so maybe we'll answer a few as we wrap up. So one, very relevant to what you were just saying about asking questions after the interview. What are some cliche questions that interviewers really hate getting from interviewees?
Well, I think the questions where it's, so tell me what you like about working at this job. I can, or tell me, hey, can you tell me what the most challenging thing is for you in this position, or what are some of the negatives that people say about working here? I'm not going to come out and tell you, well, actually, the president's a little, right? Like, I can't really honestly answer that question. So I think instead of phrasing questions about the person themselves, right? Like, tell me, if I'm interviewing and I'm asking you, tell me what your experience is like working here. I understand the impetus and the motivation behind the question, because you're trying to connect to the people that might be working with or that you're chatting with, but it can put them in a strange position to answer that question honestly. So I think really practical questions are important, and questions about the culture, because again, it's so much of it is whether or not the person's a good fit for that particular company. So I think questions about culture are actually really important to ask.
That's great. Yeah, and then I'm gonna combine two questions as our last question, because I just think it's very relevant and something that a lot of folks are gonna need for the time that we're in right now. Is
Yeah.
like, one, what's the best way to address a gap in employment, and how do you demonstrate the value that you can add if you're applying for a job outside of your previous experience, or if you're looking for a career change?
Sure. Yeah, those are great questions, especially right now. So for a career gap, if it's COVID related, I think you definitely put COVID related, right? So you can even put, like, if there's a gap right now, if you've been unemployed for the last 2 months or something, you could say, still list your accomplishments in that job, right? And say one of the bullet lines could be, department dissolved because of COVID-19, March 2020, right? So just come out and say it. So I think that that's certainly one, just transparency in that regard is fine. Another way to kind of handle that is, and I don't know, I think a lot of people are doing this, right? There's a lot of free online classes right now that people are taking. Even if you haven't completed the full online class, even if you haven't completed the full certificate, if you're doing an online certificate program, you can say during the time, in between positions, I took this online class, I registered for this Excel workshop, I was working on my technical skills so that I would apply it to whatever position I was in next. So you can still demonstrate that you're doing something, even if there is a gap. And then, sorry, what was your second question there?
It was,
you combine.
yeah, so if you're asked about, or I guess, how do you demonstrate your value if you are applying for a job outside of your previous experience and you're looking for a career change?
Yeah, so I think that there are certain things that, right, translate over regardless. And a lot of this is coming up now with soft skills, right? Hard skills, something like coding or programming or something like that, right? Maybe I don't have that particular skill. Now, if you're going into a position that requires that, you might not get it if you don't have that particular skill. Now, if the gap isn't that obvious and isn't that clear, but you're going into maybe a different industry or a different type of job, but you still have the type of skills that are team management, conflict management, leadership, agility, right? Agile thinking, whatever it is, there's still a way that you can, and it is your responsibility to do it, connect those dots so that it's clear, so that they're positioned as transferable skills, not static and tied to one company, but that you're bringing them with you when you come to the new position. So I think a lot of people, when they're thinking about their previous skills or their previous jobs, feel sort of stuck in that silo, like, oh, I did this one thing at this one particular job. But if you can kind of pull back and look at it holistically and think, oh yeah, actually that wasn't just X skill related to that company. It really was conflict resolution, team conflict resolution, team management, whatever it is. And then apply that to how whatever it is you might be doing in the new job. So try not to think of it in such a siloed way, and pull back to kind of look at the big picture and then demonstrate that in the cover letter or in the interview.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Alexis, for giving this talk today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and real quick, if folks want to get in touch with you or want to learn more about your work, how can they reach you?
Sure, yeah. My website is thepitchprof.com. On Twitter, I'm at thepitchprof. And you can email me if you have any questions or if you want to reach out. It's info@thepitchprof.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone who's viewing, for joining us this evening. We hope that we see you next week, Tuesday, 4:30. And I hope you all have a really great evening.
Absolutely. All right, take care. Bye.